So let's start with just some general kind of crazy observations. I've decided it's the year of the beer state in presidential prediction politics. Had it not been for Missouri, which I guess is a beer state, or we outsiders think it's a beer state, without Missouri, Barack Obama would not be the Democratic nominee for president. Now, yes, I realize that Missouri's primary was framed by an initial state that he had to win in Iowa, and it was framed by a state later on that he had to win, like North Carolina. But if it hadn't been for Missouri on February 5th, his ability to win a state that looked more like real America in a race that looked more like a real race, he would not be the Democratic nominee for president. So I would say to you, how can I ignore the boy next door? Meet me in St. Louis. Louis, meet me at the fair. You're all way too young to have ever seen Judy Garland, but go Google it. How can I ignore the boy next door? I think you need to be very much aware of your positioning in the fact that he is now the Democratic nominee, and you need to figure out a way to take advantage of that. So without a beer state, no Missouri, no Obama. Second state, I've been saying for more than a year, tell me the outcome of Colorado, which I think is still a beer state, and I will tell you who wins the White House. Right now, I believe Barack Obama is going to carry Colorado. I've felt that for a very long time. It has all the dynamics of the states that are meaningful this time. States with huge numbers of newcomers, unaffiliated voters, a Republican political apparatus that can't quite figure out what it wants to be or who is in charge, and Democrats who are not as organized as they look despite their successes, because they have a Democratic governor who has said economic development has got to be my number one job. And if you put all these crazy things on the ballot that are driven by the more radical elements of the environmental group, the corporate governance crowd in alliance with organized labor, it's going to imperil economic development. So I believe Colorado is a very key state. The Democratic Convention is there. Barack Obama is going to give his acceptance speech in a 75,000 people stadium instead of inside the convention arena. It's going to be the greatest show on earth. My home state of Wisconsin, which I think now is only a beer state in consumption, not in production, but the world still thinks it's a beer state. If McCain wins Wisconsin, he wins the White House. It was the closest state in 2004 by percentage of margin between winners and losers, and of the four closest states, it was the only one that didn't flip from one campaign to the other between 2000 and 2004. So you are right in the cue giver arena, along with Colorado and along with Wisconsin. Now, who is the audience in this new world order? And does he or she live here? Many cycles ago, and I can't remember why I said this, but many cycles ago, I invented a person. And I've been waiting to meet her for a very long time because I still think that she is the relevant person for us to be communicating with in the New World Order. The person I invented, I said, whatever the cycle that was, probably back in the 80s, the most communicated with and most conflicted voter in America was an African American woman running a small business, married to a union worker, living in the suburbs of St. Louis, who had 2 kids in Catholic school. Now, in the intervening years, what has happened is she's older, her husband is older, she's probably struggling in her business, and I'll bet you that her husband no longer has this union job. Her kids are out of Catholic school, they're grown up, they're probably now going to cast their first ballot for president. And in the meantime, the Pope's taken the bishop from here and is shipping him off to Rome. So you may have a less vocal bishop coming into this election cycle than Missouri had in the last election cycle. I think this person is still your universe, and if we're not communicating with her and her household, what's wrong with us? And I believe her kids are the prototype of what we need to be looking at as we try to evaluate who are the critical voting blocks of the future. My critical voting block that I can't find anybody to find a way to survey, and so, if you guys have extra pennies, I think it would be worth it in a state like Missouri, whatever it is, would be to survey the people who grew up in union households who are somewhere under 35 and know in their heart, and their parents know, that they are never going to have a union job. And yet they grew up in the environment where communicating about economic issues was taken for granted, penetrating the household or the workforce with political messages that didn't come from the candidate or didn't come from the political party was very routine. And because they have had the advantages of education and growing up in fairly stable two-parented households with adequate middle-level incomes, they've been able to go to college, and so they can graduate, and they can, with their both economic and their geographic mobility, have these choices about what do they want to do. But reality says they're probably never going to have a union job. And even if they do, it's more likely to be a job as a teacher or some type of public employee union member, where it is going to be a little different than the kind of union their parents belong to. And I believe that that's a demographic that the employer is uniquely situated to communicate with. The age scale, the receptivity to the message, the credibility of an economic message coming into the workforce. And I think this is the kind of voter that Barack Obama has been very cleverly able to tap into. And if certain states have highly competitive presidential elections, it's going to be because in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Indiana and Missouri that you're going to find union household behavior of a certain generation very different than the behavior of that next generation. So that's kind of where I think sort of this overall. All right, now where exactly are you in 08 and beyond? Everywhere I go, I sort of have to stretch this to be exciting, and this is so easy here. This is just so easy for me to see why you are important. I've already said that without Missouri, there was no Barack Obama nomination for president, but we have to figure out, well, why did that happen? I was talking in the back about having gone to Catholic school, and I was always reluctant to be early because it meant you had to talk to the nun, so I habitually come 5 minutes late for every meeting, so I'm not the first person in the room, and other people are situated. Anyway, the begats. I go into that because one of the things you learn in Catholic school are the begats. So the begats of no Obama, no Missouri, no Missouri, no Obama. Well, no Claire McCaskill, no Missouri, no Barack Obama. If Jim Talent had won the Senate race, there probably would not have been Barack Obama carrying Missouri, and I really don't think he would be the Democratic nominee for president. So what's the impact of that? The impact of that is there are no inconsequential elections. There is always a down-the-road consequence of every election. And I don't want to go beating dead horses, but I don't blame Jim Talent for losing the Senate race as much as I do the backlog of everything the Republicans have done to themselves in this state for a number of years, which go back all the way to when Bucky Bush and Jim Talent both came appealing to me to be nominated for the U.S. House. Now, how many dang years ago was that? Most of you were not even doing anything remotely out of grade school at the time. But there are lingering consequences